Hello and welcome. I'm Mr Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX this Friday. Yes, our big focus, in fact, continues to be on the petrol and diesel story. The petrol prices and diesel prices in India continue to soar, with petrol breaching the 100 rupee mark. In India's financial capital of Mumbai, petrol is currently selling at 111 rupees. Besides immediate respite, medium-term plans, of course, are needed not just in Mumbai but across the country. This means weaning India off crude oil imports and also developing alternate sources of motor fuel. India is currently the world's third biggest importer of crude oil. We need to, on one hand, ramp up exploration of petroleum in the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. Additionally, what is required is ramping up India's EV infrastructure as well, promoting Indian EV firms and exploring alternates like ethanol and hydrogen. Joining us at this point on the broadcast is a special panel. Dr. Bijon Mishra, international consumer policy expert, is with us live. We also have Akash Jindal, senior economist, on the broadcast. Professor Aman Agarwal, director, Indian Institute of Finance, joins us live, as does squadron leader Prerna Chaturvedi, CEO, e-Wallet. Let me begin with you first, Akash Jindal. Akash, petrol and diesel prices are going through the roof. What is the short-term and long-term scenario for the petrol and diesel prices? Is this trend going to continue, or is this just an aberration?
Yeah, good evening to everybody, particularly Bijonda. Now, see, according to me, petrol and diesel prices, the way they are moving, now Brent crude is around $84 per barrel. Now, I have been predicting this on all national channels when it was at $70 per barrel, that there would be a 20% increment. That has already happened. Now, the next prediction of my organization, akashjindal.in, is that 10% further positivity is expected, because the way world is opening up, the way OPEC Plus is not increasing production, my prediction is that Brent crude could go well past $90 per barrel. So I think Brent crude is going to wreak havoc as far as India is concerned, and our forex reserves are going to be impacted. So I am very pleased to be with the topic today, because I have been saying this for the past 1 year. We need to have substitutes of imported crude oil. See, we are the fifth largest economy in the world. Now, the fifth largest economy of the world can't run on 75 to 80% imported fuel and imported source of energy. So we definitely need to have alternatives. Some of the alternatives you have very well suggested. One is more exploration, of course, in Arabian Sea, ethanol, methanol. Thirdly, now what happens is a lot of DG sets also in India are used where diesel is concerned for electricity standbys. So I think we should concentrate on renewable sources of energy also. Now, these are solar power, windmill, hydro energy, particularly solar power, because India is where we have a lot of sun. The only problem with solar power is that we don't have sufficient storage system of solar power. Generally, solar power is produced between 12 and 4, and the peak consumption are 7 to 9. So I think alternative sources of energy, renewable sources of energy particularly, are something which we need to focus on. Solar energy, windmill energy, hydro energy, these are something which we need to put lot focus on. That is very important, because we are the fifth largest economy. 10 years from now, we have the possibility, with the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we have the possibility of being the third largest economy, the way we are progressing, the way we are growing. This year, we are expected to have a GDP growth of 9.5%, which can very well make us again the fastest growing economy amongst bigger economies. And apart from that, one thing which is more required is nuclear energy. See, the way China has focused on nuclear energy, I think we should focus on nuclear energy also. That is also which can get India a lot of solutions that can give us a lot of help as far as our energy requirements is concerned. Secondly, we always keep on talking about dollar price movement, how dollar has touched 74 rupees. Now, in case we have to, in simple terms, reduce the price of dollar, is the way is to reduce our imports. And our import bill, the major component is for petrol, that is crude oil. So I think in case we can reduce the import of crude oil, we can increase the value of rupee also and definitely decrease the value of dollar also, and we'll be able to strengthen our forex reserves also. Now, Arabian Sea has lot of reserves. There have been many reports wherein those reserves could be explored, could be used. Then coming on to coal again, we have lot of coal reserves, but we have not been using them because there are environmental issues, there are issues of displacement of our tribal brothers. But some amount of coal reserves, I think the need of the hour is we need to use, because we know there is a pan-India coal shortage, and because of that, power is deficient in certain states, and that is creating problem for households, industries. So I think one is we need to have a comprehensive energy policy so that we are having energy which is quite efficient, which is at affordable rate, and which doesn't create havoc with the environment. I mean, it doesn't pollute much. So my main focus would be definitely on solar energy. I think what has happened with our policymakers is, whichever government has been there, whichever political party has been there for the past 20 years, we have been looking towards the West for solutions. We have been looking towards Europe, US to give us solutions. Now they would never advise us to go to focus more on solar energy because they don't have sun. हमारे यहाँ तो इतनी धूप है, धूप जलाती है. तो I think we should use that solar power to our advantage, and we should have those solar power storage mechanism wherein that could be used when it could be maximum produced between 12 to 4 and in the evenings, and otherwise it can be used. Then it can be used, of course, as energy for running vehicles also. That is also important. Now coming to electric vehicles is a good option. But the only problem with electric vehicles is that they are very costly. As of now, if we start substituting electric vehicles for petrol, an ordinary petrol car which costs around 5 lakh rupees, as an electric vehicle it would be costing around 25 lakh rupees. Now there is where the problem lies, because an ordinary Indian, it would be very difficult for him to go for a 25 lakh car in case of if he has to substitute it with a 5 lakh car. So even if the government provides some subsidy, even if the government provides with some loan incentives, then also it would be very difficult to immediately substitute or immediately use electric vehicles as alternatives. I think what we can do is slowly and slowly, by and by, electrical vehicles can take in, particularly two-wheelers, because two-wheelers, the cost wouldn't be that high. So we should focus first on two-wheelers. Then we should focus on reducing the cost on electric vehicles. If we can reduce the cost of electrical vehicles, then I think it's okay. Then comes CNG. CNG in Delhi, it has been used by a lot of commercial vehicles, taxis, autos. It has been useful and quite efficient. So I think CNG also should be promoted. So overall, I think comprehensive policy needs to be required, where the focus should be on cost reduction, lesser emissions, more energy, and sufficient energy for running all our vehicles and industry. That is what my point of view is.
Right. Let me also, in fact, quickly rope in Bijon Mishra at this point. Bijon Mishra, the fact is consumers' pockets are being pinched. They've just coming out of a pandemic, and now they have such high fuel prices. What's the solution? Are we going to have to look at alternatives, to have an equitable solution for the long term? Because every year if prices go up, consumers' pockets are going to be pinched and household budgets will be compromised.
So you see, I have always been saying that we need lean governance. You see, we have to understand that the best friend of a consumer is competition, availability, abundance. We have always lived throughout our life, at least I'm now 70. I've always lived out of scarcity. And there is always a demand, and which are not been able to be fulfilled. Why is government in business? I don't understand. They're not supposed to be in business. They have made a mess of electricity. They have made a mess of the public transport system. So where does the consumer go? The poor perhaps, they're bound to buy vehicles where they could have avoided. Yes, if they want to go with the family, sometimes once a week, they can take out their vehicle. But otherwise, they should have been using public transport system. And how much of saving could have happened? You know, today the poor consumer, nobody is bothered about the middle class. Nobody is bothered. There is no social security. There is nothing called, you know, where you can depend on in terms of healthcare, in terms of children education, in terms of ensuring that you see, today the whole issue is we are all the time talking about petroleum pricing. Do you understand the amount of taxation which is there on petroleum products and why it is there? Because the government has to run. And in order for the government to run, it has to tax the people. And when you tax the people, naturally, you know, there will be a huge inflation. My contention is you have to be competitive. The food has to be very affordable and accessible to all. Shelter has to be very affordable. The rentals are so high in our country. See, when I go overseas, what do I see? You know, the basic amenities are provided to the citizens at an affordable cost, and there is choice at the marketplace.
Yes.
There is never a choice here. I am all the time being pushed to buy something where I don't see that I can get a quality product at a cheaper price. There is nothing called quality in our country. And if there is nothing called quality in our country, you know, you get away selling any kind of products you feel like. And the consumer has no option but to buy. And that is where, you know, this demand and supply comes in. And that is why you will always see we are slaves of scarcity. And the whole infrastructure is non-functional, non-accountable, non-transparent. You know, today, why did the Prime Minister have to inaugurate the Gati Shakti? Because he realized that the public money is going down the drain and nobody is talking about it. Nobody is talking about it and making the system accountable. We are becoming so dependent that, you know, we all will get government jobs. Government job is the best job because most secure. No performance, no accountability, no efficiency. So we need to bring in competition, and government should not be in business for heaven's sake. You can see the banking sector, what a kind of a mess it is in.
Yeah.
You can see anywhere, you just point your finger and you will find it's all in a mess because we dependent highly on government.
Okay.
We should not be dependent on government. We should be ensuring that, as my friend Jindal has given all the options. These are no rocket science. Everybody knows that there are options. But who is going to bring the options to the front of the consumer in an affordable price? It's the private sector. It's the entrepreneurs who have to be encouraged, who has to be given incentives. Infrastructure has to be built in, where the people who invest money, they know that they're going to get a suitable return on their investment.
Okay, is that the solution?
Know that I get value for money.
Is that the solution, Professor Aman Agarwal? Because we need to look at alternatives. Should there be more crude oil exploration in the Arabian Sea, in this side of the Indo-Pacific region? Should we reduce our dependency on oil imports, which could raise prices time and time again since deregulation has taken place? What's the solution, Professor Agarwal? Because, consumers' pockets are being pinched.
You see, the direct solution as of today of the kind of pinching a common man, you and me, is facing at the behest of huge taxes being levied on the oil prices and giving a sustainable boost to inflation and ultimately sluggishness in demand for some of these products in due course, which is already being seen in the inflation figures which are being projected, which is going down because of food inflation going down, is because of the fact of roughly about 58 to 60 or 70% of taxation in the oil prices. Now, one of the direct solutions which is in the hands of the government and can be implemented if the government desires, the kind of strong footing it has both in the lower house and otherwise in terms of decision making, is that to introduce it into the GST framework, which has been in debate since Arun Jaitley introduced GST. And in the first few meetings held by Arun Jaitley at the time, it was there. And recently also, because of the court of Kerala, they did have to talk about introduction of oil in the GST framework in the last meeting, which was recently held. Now, that is one straightforward measure, bringing down taxes from 60, as I said, 58 to 70% to roughly about 28%, even if you keep it in the highest slab. You see, so there you will be immediately able to reduce the prices to 50% of the prices which were existing in 2015 when this government came into power, as against what we are seeing today of 100, 110 rupees of fuel prices, which we are seeing in the markets in different states. Firstly. Secondly, this government has been able to re-fulfill the oil pool account. The oil pool account was a mechanism suggested by the Indian Institute of Finance way back in 1989, when N.D. Tiwari introduced that in the framework of oil, wherein excess revenue generated from oil without changing the prices, because we had regulated prices at that time, would be kept in that account, and then any local fluctuation which would happen because of international market price movement would be taken care of from that particular oil account. Now, that was utilized extensively when Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government was there in the 1920s and late 2010, sorry. And then after that, recently also when this government came into power, they utilized this. In the last 4 or 5 years, they have been able to replenish this account extensively. As some of the estimates which have come out today also and a couple of days back also, it is estimated that from 1.7 lakh crores, which was being the earnings of the central government through the excise tax and all, was about 1.7 lakh crore in 2014-15, has risen to 4.6 lakh crore in 2020-21. So if you're taking an average of roughly say 4 lakh crore every year, so for about 5 years, they have been able to accumulate about 25 to 30 lakh crores in the form of money which is there lying in the oil pool account, which can be utilized immediately for any kind of emergency, plus can be utilized to reduce the prices which are excessively being burdened. Thirdly, this concept of the open market system, which has been introduced from regulatory framework by the Congress government in the previous to this government term, around 2012 and all, was completely flawed. Because please understand that the oil which you get in your cars and bikes today in your vehicle is something which has been imported roughly about 3 to 4 months back and has been built and paid for 3 to 4 months back. That means this oil actually has come and bought by the government 3-4 months back. Then it had to come by ships and other mechanisms and then refined to come to the end consumer. So the pricing, charging the price of today's volatile price in the market is wrong. Fourthly, these prices are contracted prices. Now, the last contracts which were existing, which the prices came into public about 5 years back or so, was roughly about varying between $55 a barrel to $65 a barrel. Now, if that is the contract price, and where you are actually buying 98 to 99% of your total consumption every year, then there is no question of charging the consumer a price which is existing in the burnt exchange or any other exchange today, which maybe even today is around $80, $85 a barrel or so, but which has been averaging even this year, the average is roughly about $65 or $65.81 so far. So, they have to re-look at this mechanism, on account of which oil companies, which are held by the government as subsidiaries, are the ones which are generating revenues to pay off as dividends to the government and making them rich. Now, it is not a question of becoming rich on the behest of these companies, but seeing that the market equilibrium and market balance is maintained, where the poorest of the poor man is able to survive and earn his livelihood and have a good meal, a square meal, without any problems, despite other problems which have been focused in the last 2 years because of Corona. Now, these are some of the things which the government needs to look upon, and it is, as I said, there are mechanisms which can reduce the oil prices. Alternative, I'll just take half a second more. Alternative sources are a solution which I suggested at the Finnish parliament also, after which Sonia Gandhi ji introduced the solar business in the country also in 2007, but it has never picked up on the behest of the industry. However, nuclear is not a source, because the nuclear waste destruction or disposal is one of the biggest problems which the world is facing today, and various countries are challenged with this. EV is also not a solution, because the way power is created is through coal in this country. And ultimately, you are raising pollution as a source of production of that power, which is still not deliverable in large part of the country. I would say about 98% of the country does not have any EV points even today. Where do we get the vehicles getting up in place and in functionality. Apart from the deliverables, also a difficulty today. So neither EV nor nuclear is a solution, but alternative sources which we're very rich in, like
Right.
water.
I want to get in. Yeah, Professor Agarwal, just stay with us. I want to get in Squadron Leader Prerna Chaturvedi as well to look at the EV aspect. That's one no-brainer, isn't it? Switch to EV, forget about the high fuel prices. But obviously, it's easier said than done. Much more will have to change on ground to get people to switch to EV. But is that the long-term solution, you believe, to this big fuel conundrum? Prerna Chaturvedi?
I think there are two ways of looking at this solution. It is not as simple as it sounds. And I think I would just pick up the threads from where this entire conversation started. I think it will all have to begin from the consumer behavior. If we were to optimize our if we were to optimize our entire consumption, it is the consumer whom we have to start educating on an optimal usage of energy, whichever source that comes from. And that's the way to go. The way we burn, whether it is fuel or an alternative source of energy, unless we are educated and attuned to start living in an environment conscious situation. It's that consciousness which is only on our desks and on our tables. It is still not percolated to the households of the people in the way they use their pattern. Secondly, once the consumer is consciously aware as to how they should be using the energy sources available to them at whatever cost alone would not matter. And of course, I agree. The kind of price to benefit ratio we were looking at somewhere around 2011 or 2012 through 2016. In cases of electric vehicles, that barrier has already been broken now. So the kind of capex the consumer had to pay to buy a two-wheeler earlier, which was almost at par or about 1.5 times the cost of an IC vehicle. It is not so now. So if we were to compare between apples and oranges, between an economy EV and an economy petrol scooter, the price of an economy electric scooter is much lesser by about, it's just about 75% of the price. So let's say a ballpark number, if you were buying a scooter or an economy bike for about 90,000 rupees, an economy electric scooter will definitely cost you somewhere around 60 or 65,000 rupees, or even lesser now, and which becomes even more competitive with the kind of aid each of the state and the central government is providing to the table to make sure that this shift is faster, smoother, and is just accelerated. But whilst if we want to compare an economy scooter vis-a-vis a luxury or an aspirational scooter, an economy IC scooter is going to be like 80,000-90,000 rupees, while the luxury one will definitely come at a cost of 1.7, an electric vehicle. Similar has been the case in case of four-wheelers, the cars, wherein we've not been able to see volumes yet. But if we were to see a larger landscape across the country, 79 to 81% of the mobility on roads is entirely governed in India by two-wheeler segments. So it's the two-wheeler people which can be the drivers of change if we are optimally educated, if we are able to convey to a consumer. And this is that segment which is not dependent on the development of the infrastructure. Again, by most of the institutes, the way they have conducted their surveys and the market researches for last 6-7 years that we have run through, we can see that most of the two-wheeler consumers in the country, from whichever part of the country that we see, they run about 3 to 5 kilometers is about 80% usage. About 10 to 15 to 18 kilometers in another 5 to 7%. And there are very, very few segments, barring the commercial usage. There are very, very few people who are left who are looking at using an electric vehicle for more than 100 kilometers or 140 kilometers a day. Whilst most of the two-wheeler OEMs have already qualified the benchmark of providing a single charge range of about 80 to 120 kilometers at ease. And the faith has already started to build in. And it's this segment which is really not dependent on infrastructure. They can use it as easy as they're using their mobile phones these days. And I understand that the moment a regular economy consumer starts to save the bare 3,000 to 6,000 rupees which was spent on petrol prices, it's very easy to start. It's very easy for them to start thinking on shifting. The moment one household starts using an electric vehicle, the entire community becomes aware of what it can do, what kind of savings can it bring. But at the same time, I completely agree with Professor Mishra on this, that it's the industry which will be able to crack the price to benefit ratio, and it's only the economies of scale which can drive this. And we all, not only as the OEMs or the consumers, it is also the government will have to come forward to educate the people in how we use the newer energy and make sure that it is environmentally sustainable. It is actually doing good to the environment and not otherwise. We will have to be really, really conscious.
Okay.
And OEMs, this is the step that we take.
Can I come in? Can I add on
Okay.
to Parna?
Sure.
We're running out of time. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Just quickly, Parna, the best example is telecom. You know,
Yes.
we used to be giving Diwali gifts to the telecom people who used to come to my house. And now the telecom people are giving Diwali gifts to us. That you take the phone, forget about the money part of it. You know, what a kind of a great competitive environment which has brought in and empowered the consumer. And what you very rightly said, you see, we have to migrate to a more modern technology. The consumer has to be given that value for money and the benefit. See, today the telecom sector is vibrating. Why? Because of assuring connectivity. And it has gone to the remotest areas of our country. So what we need to understand is technology, quality. You see, I am all the time talking about quality because I believe that if we are able to bring in quality, we are going to bring in efficiency and value for money to the consumer. And that is what is going to check the inflation. That is what is going to bring good, healthy competition in the country. And petroleum or any kind of a fuel which we are talking about has to be left to the private sector to compete with each other to flourish. Not government controlling the supplies and not government controlling taxation and all that. It should be market driven. And that is why GST, we have been talking about bringing petroleum products under GST, but still they are, having cold.
I just want 10 seconds.
Okay, I'm afraid we've run out of time. If I give 10 seconds to all of you, we'll have to take another half an hour. But yes, this is an evolving issue. So we do promise to have, of course, more debates on it. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us today.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.